I recently produced a video in which I shared tips to get close to raptors for impressive wildlife photography. I had a lot of messages and comments coming from you, the viewer, sharing additional tips. So I thought that I would create a bonus video sharing some of those tips as well as a few of my own to help you produce incredible images of raptors. Now, the first tip that I'd like to share with you, and this was brought up by multiple viewers of my last video, and with experience, I can tell you that this is absolutely true. Several viewers mentioned that it might be best to have the camera up at your eye whenever you're approaching. In fact, like the actual just movement of moving the camera up to your eye oftentimes is enough to spook the bird and make it fly away. And I can tell you from experience that absolutely is true. So it might be a good idea as you approach in the zigzag pattern that I mentioned in the previous video. You might even want to have the camera up at your eye while you're doing that. I have found that even when photographing from my car or truck using it as a blind, whenever I take my camera from the passenger seat and move it over, that action of moving the camera and bringing it up to my face oftentimes will make a bald eagle, for instance, fly away. So having that camera already at your face as you're making that turn is a great tip and one that's going to allow you to make more shots. Now, speaking of using a vehicle for a blind, Andy Tychin said this: "One of my theories is that human movement, especially the walking motion, is crucial in whether or not a bird flees. When I'm on my riding mower, I can get within 5 feet of birds that would otherwise flee if I got within 150 feet of them when I'm walking or upright, wearing the same clothes, same light, same weather. I take this to be that these birds don't see the mower's movement as a perceived threat, yet the action of walking is." So this goes back to that idea of using your vehicle as a blind if you have the opportunity to do so in a safe way, or maybe using a four-wheeler or a tractor if it's on your own property or something like that. I've definitely heard of people that use four-wheelers and they're able to get close to deer and other animals because they don't perceive that vehicle to be a threat. Now, not all blinds need to be mobile, obviously. A blind can be a great way to conceal your motions and allow yourself to still be slightly human while you wait for a bird to show up. The key, of course, is always going to be scouting the location and picking a spot where a blind is going to be in a position where you're actually going to be able to capture a shot of your subject. So you're going to want to place it in a location where the birds are going to frequent and where the shot is going to be aesthetically pleasing. I made a video all about using a backyard blind that I'll link in the description below. Now, if you don't want to use a blind, another strategy can be to find a location and wait for the subject to come to you. Now, I would highly suggest maybe doing a little bit of research, finding out what they might like to eat, and maybe placing yourself in that position, finding a spot that's going to be aesthetically pleasing as well whenever your subject does arrive. But it can be a great way just to immerse yourself in nature and just enjoy being out. If you make a shot, fantastic, and if you don't, you're satisfied with just spending time in nature. Now, this approach probably isn't going to yield a great number of opportunities, and you might go home sometimes empty-handed, but if you're just wanting to immerse yourself in the peacefulness of nature, this can be an excellent approach. Another viewer left a comment that I find very interesting. It's something that I haven't tried before. Maybe some of you have. Michael P., and I'll let you look at his name there. I won't try to butcher it. But Michael said that one thing that you could try is to turn your body so you aren't actually facing them head on. So your body is kind of angled away from the bird while you kind of cradle the camera and take your shot. So your body is facing away from the bird as you photograph them. I can definitely see this working. Again, something that I haven't tried, but it might be worth giving it a whirl. Peter Cooney 9156 said this: "From experience, I know that some birds do not like the AF confirm beep. One small bird, which has a similar tone of call, became puffed up and kept getting closer and closer. which was a nice problem to have. And I think it assumed the sound was an intruder invading its territory and became aggressive and defensive, and probably stressed. So this wasn't good birding etiquette, so I've turned the beep off for most situations. Something else that he said that I think was really interesting. Birds see in UV, so avoid clothing with a white base color. White cloth usually contains optical whiteners and brighteners that are highly UV reflective, as do many detergents. Even the modeled camos can show it. A UV torch is a way to check. I was not aware that birds see in UV, but this comment makes a whole lot of sense, and why it would make a whole lot of sense to try to blend in with your environment even a little bit more. It also stands to reason why it makes sense to cover those big, bright white Canon lenses. Now, the reason that Canon makes a white lens for their L series is because the white is going to reflect off the bright light of the sun and not absorb it like black does. So the lens and all of the elements inside it are not going to get extremely hot, or at least not as hot as if the lens was black. But it might make sense then to camouflage your lens a bit. I know that I've used some tape, some camo tape that I've wrapped around certain parts of my lens, and I use some other materials on other parts of the lens. And of course, Lens Coat makes great wraps for lenses. So I think that Peter makes a great observation here, and it's probably good advice to take to avoid wearing and using white objects whenever you're out shooting wildlife, especially if you're photographing birds. Now, obviously, if you're in the snow, that's different. You're going to want to blend in with that environment. I hope that some of these bonus tips are helpful for you and you're able to create some really dynamic, interesting shots that we're all after. If you want to see me putting some of these tips into practice, you can check out this video over here. Thanks so much for watching.